that's not pleasant. Test, yeah, okay. Hmm. We are only. Do I need to sign into YouTube? No, I don't. Hmm. Oh, okay. Says we're good now. Okie dokie artichoke. I don't want to spit my gum out. I'm still enjoying it. What is Online Library of Liberty? Huh. Wait, is this part of the econ lib thing? I seem associated with that. Adam Smith. Should we read Wealth of Nations next? How many words is Wealth of Nations? 8. Oh, 9 hours. Wait, how does this work? Um, Progress and poverty. Yes. Couldn't estimate the reading time for this book. We're going to click here. Uh, yeah, there's a lot of footnotes. Oh, okay, maybe not. Copy. 170,000 words. About 10 and a half hours to read it. So Wealth of Nations is perhaps a little shorter than Progress and Poverty. Hmm. 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 All right. What did I do? Here we go. Hello, welcome to the 97th episode of the Henry George Daily Devotional. My name is Max, and I'm a Georgist. I am recording these recordings, readings, because my friend John didn't like the free audiobook of Progress and Poverty, and it is my mission to make John a Georgist. We continue in chapter 4 of book 9. Of the changes that would be wrought in social organization and social life. George writes, does this seem impracticable? Consider for a moment the vast changes that would be wrought in social life by a change which would assure to labor its full reward, which would banish want and the fear of want, and give to the humblest freedom to develop in natural symmetry. In thinking of the possibilities of social organization, we are apt to assume that greed is the strongest of human motives, and that systems of administration can be safely based only upon the idea that the fear of punishment is necessary to keep men honest, that selfish interests are always stronger than general interests. Nothing could be further from the truth. I don't know about saying further from the truth. As we know from reading most of this book already, George has said many, many times that it is a truth like gravity, that men seek to satisfy their desires with the least exertion. To me, that is sort of a hop, skip, and a jump. I don't know if that is the right term. To me, it is very easy to see how that could be considered very similar to greed. However, uh, George's formation saying that they seek to satisfy their desires doesn't say or specify what exactly their desires are. So you get into these, is it selfish if your personal desire is to make people happy? And so making people happy, you're just actually being selfish. Um, I'm not a philosopher, so you can deal with that elsewhere. We'll keep going. From whence springs this lust for gain? Oh, I see where you might be going with this. To gratify which men tread everything pure and noble under their feet, to which they sacrifice all the higher possibilities of life, which converts civility into a hollow pretense, patriotism into a sham, and religion into hypocrisy, which makes so much of civilized existence an Ishmaelitish warfare, of which the weapons are cunning and fraud. Does it not spring from the existence of want? Yeah, George goes hard on the poverty causes uncivil behavior. And and he said, it's also not simply being impoverished that causes it, but there is a huge amount of fear of becoming impoverished in the middle and wealthy, the other parts of society. I cannot tell you how much of my dad, who is a well-to-do medical doctor, uh, who didn't grow up with a lot of money, not super poor, but not with a lot of money. Um, but I think one of the strongest motivations he has for wanting me to be rich and for him to keep making money is the fear of running out of money, the fear of being poor when he can't work anymore, and the fear of his kids being poor. It's almost always phrased when you're talking about like, what are you gonna, what about your future? What about your future? Which I think is simply saying, if you don't make money now and save it up, you're gonna be thrown to the street, trapped under George's wedge. Uh, yeah, I was talking to a friend whose father's not doing well, but he really wants my friend to buy a house or to buy them a house. He's like, you gotta get a house. He doesn't know anything about Georgism, unless my friend has not told him. All right, we'll keep going. Does it not spring from the existence of want? Carlyle somewhere says that poverty is the hell of which the modern Englishman is most afraid, and he is right. Poverty is the open-mouthed, relentless hell which yawns beneath civilized society, and it is hell enough. The Vedas declare no truer thing than when the wise crow Bhushanda tells the eagle-bearer of Vishnu that the keenest pain is in poverty. For poverty is not merely deprivation, it means shame, degradation. the searing of the most sensitive parts of our moral and mental nature as with hot irons, the denial of the strongest impulses and the sweetest affections, the wrenching of the most vital nerves. You love your wife, you love your children, but would it not be easier to see them die than to see them reduced to the pinch of want in which large classes in every highly civilized community live? The strongest of animal passions is that with which we cling to life, but it is an everyday occurrence in civilized societies for men to put poison to their mouths or pistols to their heads from fear of poverty. For one who does this, there are probably 100 who have the desire, but are restrained by instinctive shrinking, by religious considerations, or by family ties. From this hell of poverty it is but natural that men should make every effort to escape. With the impulse to self-preservation and self-gratification combine nobler feelings, and love as well as fear urges in the struggle. Many a man does a mean thing, a dishonest thing, a greedy and grasping and unjust thing, in the effort to place above want or the fear of want mother or wife or children. And out of this condition of things arises a public opinion which enlists as an impelling power in the struggle to grasp and to keep one of the strongest, perhaps with many men the very strongest, springs of human action, the desire for approbation, the feeling that urges us to win the respect, admiration, or sympathy of our fellows, is instinctive and universal. Distorted sometimes into the most abnormal manifestations, it may yet be everywhere perceived. It is potent with the veriest savage, as with the most highly cultivated member of the most polished society. It shows itself with the first gleam of intelligence and persists to the last breath. It triumphs over the love of ease, over the sense of pain, over the dread of death. It dictates the most trivial and most important actions. The child, just beginning to toddle or to talk, will make new efforts as its cunning little tricks excite attention and laughter. The dying master of the world gathers his robes around him that he may pass away as becomes a king. Chinese mothers will deform their daughters' feet by cruel stocks. European women will sacrifice their own comfort and the comfort of their families to similar dictates of fashion. The Polynesian, that he may excite admiration by his beautiful tattoo, will hold himself still while his flesh is torn by sharks' teeth. The North American Indian, tied to the stake, will bear the most fiendish tortures without a moan, and that he may be respected and admired as a great brave, will taunt his tormentors to new cruelties. Yeah. It is this that leads the forlorn hope. It is this that trims the lamp of the pale student. It is this that impels men to strive, to strain, to toil, and to die. It is this that raised the pyramids and that fired the Ephesian dome. Now men admire what they desire. How sweet to the storm-stricken seems the safe harbor, food to the hungry, drink to the thirsty, warmth to the shivering, rest to the weary, power to the weak, knowledge to him in whom the intellectual yearnings of the soul have been aroused. And thus the sting of want and the fear of want make men admire above all things the possession of riches, and to become wealthy is to become respected and admired and influential. Get money honestly if you can, but at any rate get money. This is the lesson that society is daily and hourly dinning in the ears of its members. Men instinctively admire virtue and truth, but the sting of want and the fear of want make them even more strongly admire the rich and sympathize with the fortunate. It is well to be honest and just, and men will commend it, But he who by fraud and injustice gets him $1 million will have more respect and admiration and influence, more eye service and lip service, if not heart service, than he who refuses it. The one may have his reward in though the one may have his reward in the future, he may know that his name is writ in the book of life, and that for him is the white robe and the palm branch of the victor against temptation. But the other has his reward in the present. His name is writ in the list of our substantial citizens. He has the courtship of men and the flattery of women, the best pew in the church and the personal regard of the eloquent clergyman who in the name of Christ preaches the gospel of Dives and tones down into a gospel of Dives. This is some reference to like the rich man. I forget historical meaning of who was Dives. Worldling who did not look beyond the good things of his life, contrasted with Lazarus. So yeah, this is a bit of a reversal, saying Christ preaches the gospel of Dives and tones down into meaningless flower of Eastern speech the stern metaphor of the camel and the needle's eye. The camel and the needle's eye is well, some say there's some argument over the translation of the verse. As a kid, it was always, it is harder for a rich man to enter the heavens, the pearly gates, I forget the exact term, the kingdom of God, than it is for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle. Some aren't so sure that, yeah, of that translation, but that is what the gist of that means anyway. And so he's saying the eloquent clergymen talk about Dives being worldly and rich, and they tone down the meaninglessness, or they tone it down into a meaningless flower of Eastern speech, the stern metaphor about how hard it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. He may be a patron of arts, a Maecenas to men of letters, may profit by the converse of the intelligent and be polished by the attrition of the refined. His alms may feed the poor and help the struggling, and bring sunshine into desolate places, and noble public institutions commemorate after he is gone, his name and his fame. It is not in the guise of a hideous monster with horns and tall that Satan tempts the children of men, but as an angel of light. His promises are not alone of the kingdoms of the world, but of mental and moral principalities and powers. He appeals not only to the animal appetites, but to the cravings that stir in man, because he is more than an animal. Take the case of those miserable men with muckrakes, who are to be seen in every community as plainly as Bunyan saw their type in his vision. I don't remember what this is. This is 1906 and 1903, and George wrote 1900 or 1879. They were reform-minded journalists in the 1890s. So this is all... Okay, yeah, it's a Pilgrim's Progress reference. That's what I was looking for. The man with the muckrake who rejected salvation to focus on filth. That's the reference that George is talking about. You wonder if his use of the word muckrake here brought back made that term a little more popular again, which might have inspired these reform-minded journalists to become known as muckrakers. Who knows? Maybe it was just it's most likely just a common term of the time, men with the muckrakes. Although if you had to explain it right here, maybe it wasn't so common. Take the case of those miserable men with muckrakes who are to be seen in every community as plainly as Bunyan saw their type in his vision, who, long after they have accumulated wealth enough to satisfy every desire, go on working, scheming, striving to add riches to riches. It was the desire to be something, nay, in many cases, the desire to do noble and generous deeds, that started them on a career of money getting. And what compels them to it long after every possible need is satisfied, what urges them still with unsatisfied and ravenous greed, is not merely the force of tyrannous habit, but the subtler gratifications which the possession of riches give. The sense of power and influence, the sense of being looked up to and respected, the sense that their wealth not merely raises them above want, but makes them men of mark in the community in which they live. It is this that makes the rich man so loath to part with his money, so anxious to get more. Some strong words from Mr. George today. Against temptations that thus appeal to the strongest impulses of our nature, the sanctions of laws and the precepts of religion can effect but little. And the wonder is, not that men are so self-seeking, but that they are not much more so. That under present circumstances, men are not more grasping, more unfaithful, more selfish than they are, proves the goodness and fruitfulness of human nature. The ceaseless flow of the perennial fountains from which its moral qualities are fed. All of us have mothers, most of us have children, and so faith and purity and unselfishness can never be utterly banished from the world, howsoever bad be social adjustments. I think there's this other side. Like if there weren't this sort of goodness and fruitfulness in human nature, like people wouldn't be so, you know, if it were super clear that everyone was a piece of shit, then it's hard to see why people would strive to become respected men of such a community. They only, it's only sort of, I would imagine that there has to be some kernel of like, of esteem by the rich man for the opinions of the other men, right? Like, I don't think you really care about being popular and loved if you genuinely think everybody's opinion is garbage and everyone is garbage or something. So anyway, hmm. Howsoever bad be social adjustments. But whatever is potent for evil may be made potent for good. The change I have proposed would destroy the conditions that distort impulses in themselves beneficent, and would transmute the forces which now tend to disintegrate society into forces which would tend to unite and purify it. I will also say, though, that the esteem of rich men, as society has begun over the last 100 years, 130, 40 years since George, 150 years, um, I think as society begins to be generally viewed as more and more corrupt, the wealthy are not, they don't get the esteem that they want simply by being wealthy as much because we can't really look at that wealth and attribute as much like honorable, valuable contributions, which might drive them to want to make even more money since it does give them a taste of it. It is definitely true that when you meet rich people, uh, it has quite an effect on me. Um, and you think they know things more and they're better at things. Like, yeah, And even in this, there is even an admiration for somebody being able to sort of do it within a corrupt world. Like they're able to even out corrupt or game the system or something like that. But depends on how much you know about how they got their wealth, where, Give labor a free field and its full earnings. Take for the benefit of the whole community that fund which the growth of the community creates, and want and the fear of want would be gone. The springs of production would be set free, and the enormous increase of wealth would give the poorest ample comfort. Men would no more worry about finding employment than they worry about finding air to breathe. They need have no more care about physical necessities than do the lilies of the field. The progress of science, the march of invention, the diffusion of knowledge would bring their benefits to all. Yeah. And I also think you might be able to labor in a more peaceful environment, unless you want a more intense one. But it's always seemed very odd to me when I've had miscellaneous jobs. I can think of like this one boss when I worked at a math textbook publisher. She was stressed out, and it just seemed like, if I put my report in the wrong box, it was the end of the world. Not the end of the world, but I was gonna get in big trouble. And it's, in this particular instance, like when the people take the documents out of the box and look at it, it's like, oh, this is the wrong one. It's not like it got shipped. Yeah, it was an overreaction on her part. It was a mistake on my part. Uh, and people are gonna overreact or underreact. I don't. They're gonna make these, regardless. But I think, uh, I mean, I even know how like it's like I've even been around. I mean, I never worked as a server, worked as a barista, but when I hear servers talk about how stressful being a server was, um, and it's like, that should just be this nice. You're serving people food. It, I don't know. Just so much seems to become like life and death because they're not wrong. Like you lose a job, you get fired. I don't know what the rules are now about at the next job if they ask you if you can if you how you why you quit your last job if you have to tell them. I don't think you do. But life and death on the line makes it pretty hard to just enjoy your work. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are not too far from looking at their day-to-day work as life and death. Because losing that job would be pretty devastating. They lose the job for a few weeks, they don't make rent, they're out on the street, and they know people that's happened to. Yep. People not making rent. All right, Asa lasagna, don't get any on ya. HGDD 97. Oh, I may have said the wrong number at the beginning. Oh well. No going back. No going back. Book 9, Chapter 4, continued. episode 97. Um, Poverty is hell, and poverty is everywhere. Poverty and the fear of poverty is misery and hell on earth. One of the reasons men compete so viciously for wealth is fear of poverty. It is remarkable that people are still so good, given how desperate their plight often is. No, no, no. 197.
Can you?
Comments. Um, you get emails and YouTube get emails when comments received. Oh, I just want a graph. Child homelessness in the past 50 years. Goodbye, stream.